Hello, my name is Carol Nadell. For those of you who have tuned in before, welcome back. And if this is your first time, I'm delighted to have you here, and thank you so much for inviting me into your Lionsgate home for a short visit. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've lived in New York City for over 50 years, but because of the pandemic, I'm staying with my sister and brother-in-law in Voorhees. So at least for now, I am your neighbor. Over the past several years, I've enjoyed writing short personal essays about many aspects of my life, both the good times and the more difficult ones. I've even been fortunate enough to have some of these pieces published. Because I believe that much of what I write about can be easily related to by other people, especially those of, shall we say, a certain age, like most of us, I am delighted to share some of these stories with you. I hope you'll enjoy them and find something in them that seems familiar, that rings true, that brings a smile to your face, maybe even a little tear to your eye. If you joined me last week, you may remember that I read a piece I wrote about becoming a grandmother, without, it happens, having ever been a mother. Well, this week I have two short pieces about my own mother, who passed away about 10 years ago at the age of 97. I was lucky enough to have 65 years of memories with her, and I'm happy to share a couple of those with you now. Not surprisingly, for a Jewish mother, both of these stories revolve around food. The first one is called The Short Order Cook. The Short Order Cook. The unmistakable aroma of frying bacon is wafting up to my New York City apartment from the inappropriately named Blue Valley Deli, 8 stories below. This intrusion does not annoy me. On the contrary, it delights me. A proud but very secular Jew, I love bacon. I love the smell of it. I love the porky, succulent flavor of it. I love the crispy texture of it. I love picking it up in my hand and digging it into the gooey egg yolk I release by puncturing the perfectly cooked fried eggs that must accompany it. As I deeply inhale the incomparable odors entering my apartment, I am transported back more than 60 years and over 200 miles to the kitchen of my childhood home. The kitchen appears old-fashioned to me now, with its formica countertops, its linoleum floors, its freestanding stove with no resting place for utensils, and its strangely positioned dishwasher, clearly an afterthought in this house built in the 1920s and purchased by my parents in the mid-40s. It's Sunday morning. My mother is at the stove, attired as always in her colorful print jumper-style pocketed apron. She's preparing fried eggs and bacon for the family. First, she cooks the bacon, filling the kitchen with that distinctive and alluring aroma. After carefully placing the still sizzling rashers on pieces of paper towel to drain, she pours some of the bacon fat into the Minute Maid orange juice can that has been preserved for this important purpose. After placing the can back in the refrigerator for future use, she returns to the stove to cook the eggs in the remaining bacon fat. Yes, the secret ingredient in her perfect eggs is the bacon fat in which she cooks them. In this family of 5, there are 5 egg preferences, all expressed loudly and with conviction. My father requires his eggs to be alarmingly well done, both the white and the yolk. My brother demands the picture-perfect sunny side up eggs. For my sister, the eggs must be over easy. And for me, the baby of the family, the parameters are very clear. A beautifully runny yolk, but absolutely, positively, no white goozy. Somehow, with great skill and seemingly preternatural patience, my mother satisfies all the tastes and demands of her idiosyncratic family. That is just what she does. It's who she is. In all the years I was growing up, I don't think I ever heard the phrase, "This is what's for dinner. If you don't like it, I guess you won't eat tonight." Instead, when my mother made the brisket that friends and family raved about and I turned my nose up at, she uncomplainingly made me a hamburger. And so it went. Indeed, there were times that our family of 5 had as many as 3 different meals, or at least 3 different variations of the same meal. And my mother, who longed for the fish dinner that her family shunned, would cook a normal meal for the rest of us while defrosting and heating up Mrs. Paul's fish sticks for herself. Not exactly an elegant seafood dinner, but as close as she could get. The fish sticks were usually accompanied by a hefty portion of frozen spinach, also rejected by the rest of the family. We would tease her about her strange tastes, but she soldiered on with her usual good humor, laughing off our jesting and declaring herself to be sublimely happy with her meal. I sometimes wonder if catering to the family's culinary whims was a good thing. I didn't develop a very extensive palate until I was well into adulthood. Would I have been more adventurous earlier if I hadn't been allowed to reject the things I didn't like? Perhaps. But while it may have driven her crazy sometimes, I know my mother loved feeding her family and making us happy. So maybe it worked for her. And I know it worked for me because even now I look back on those things she did and they make me smile. To my mother, I think this was all about something bigger than food. It was about love. She was a fun, friendly, voluble woman, but she didn't easily express her feelings. Pronouncements of I love you just weren't heard around our house. I think that the preparation and serving of these custom-made meals was one very important way for her to show her love for her family. She also made me the biggest and best sandwiches to take to school for lunch, even when I was in high school. I can still see the chunky, incomparably moist, homemade chicken salad oozing out the sides of the Jewish rye bread. I loved her for making those sandwiches, and I was the envy of the cafeteria. And here's a different kind of tribute to my mother. I have a feeling this might well have a familiar ring for some of you. I call this In Praise of Pyrex. In Praise of Pyrex. Oh my God, you have those bowls too, my friend Marion exclaimed as she watched me prepare our lunch. Her eyes lit up as I tossed the kale, the dried cranberries, and the slivered almonds in the green Pyrex mixing bowl. Yes, and I have these two also, I said, moving quickly to show off the medium-sized red one and the smaller blue one. They nest into each other and fit perfectly into my cabinet. Marion couldn't have been more excited. But do you have the big yellow one? She inquired eagerly. Nope, never had that one, I answered, somewhat relieved as I realized that it probably would not fit into my cabinet. Mine broke, she said sadly, as if speaking of a departed family member. And of course, we were speaking of departed family members, our mothers, to whom our bowls had once belonged. Marion's mother had escaped as a young bride from Nazi Germany in 1939, just in time, as Marion describes it. Much of her family did not survive. My mother, the child of already assimilated American Jews, had lived an easier life, but she too would be buffeted by devastating, unexpected losses. Though our mothers never met, they had in common remarkable resilience and these multicolored Pyrex bowls, functional, sturdy fixtures of American kitchens in the 1940s and 50s. These two frugal, practical young housewives relied on them as they prepared meals for their growing families. Countless meatloaves with onions, ketchup, and mustard were formed in my red Pyrex bowl. In the green one, my mother would roll chicken pieces in cornflake crumbs before putting them in the oven and baking them until they were crispy and golden brown. And the small blue bowl was the perfect vessel for mixing bumblebee solid white tuna with crunchy celery creamy Miracle Whip dressing, and tangy Ritter's pickle relish, the perfect school lunch sandwich. Marion and I both lost our mothers several years ago. The bowls they passed down to us no longer gleam with their original vibrant colors. After hundreds of washings, they are faded and mottled, even lacking color completely in spots. They are scratched and bruised, but they endure. They continue to serve, and they still make us smile. So that's it for now. I wonder if these stories sparked any memories of your own childhood kitchens, or perhaps of making meals for your own family. I'd love to know whether you enjoyed hearing these short stories and whether you'd like to hear more. If you have a computer and have the time or inclination to send me a quick email, you can contact me here at cnadell@nyc.rr.com, cnadell@nyc.rr.com. I'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, thanks so much for listening and have a great day. Bye-bye.